Hi everyone, Ryan here from Fight Game Analysis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming fight between Amanda Ribas and Verna Jandarova. But before we jump into that, if you've been enjoying the content, please go ahead and click on the like button and also subscribe to the channel. Really appreciate your support. Alright, so we have a big fight coming up here this Saturday between Amanda Ribas and Verna Jandarova. Now I'll start out talking a little bit about Verna Jandarova. Now, she came in, not a lot of hype coming into the UFC. Not a lot of people talking about her. And in my opinion, gets thrown right into the deep end, very first fight against Carla Esparza. Carla Esparza is not an easy out for anybody, very accomplished wrestler. And it was impressive what Jandarova was able to do. We knew that coming in, she had a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but there's different levels to things, especially when you're dealing with an accomplished wrestler, the likes of which Esparza is. But right from the first round, we could see Jandarova felt comfortable on her back, which is important because when you're in the UFC, you're going to be dealing with some people who are going to put you there eventually. And right from the first round, right out the gate, we see that on her back, she's aggressive. Carla Esparza put her down, couldn't do any damage. Jandarova was able to set up some sweeps, some potential submissions, things like that. Now, she wasn't able to get anything, ended up losing the fight. But the way she looked in there was impressive. The other thing that fight taught us was not exactly great on the feet. That was going to be a work in progress. And it continued to be that way. We continued to see her game progress. We saw more of the same as everything happened. She goes out there against Mallory Martin, Felice Herron, Murata in her last fight, continues to prove nasty ground game, especially that last fight against Murata. Man, that armbar that she caught her in that eventually led to the end of the fight, she set stuff up, man. She's slick. Her submission game is good. We saw against Mackenzie Dern. Her striking game is still a work in progress. It's getting better, continuing to progress, but Mackenzie Dern beat her in that fight because she's better on the feet. Jandarova couldn't really handle the pressure. Mackenzie Dern is like super aggressive. She likes to come forward, throw these hard shots. She's been working with Jason Perillo, so her striking is getting leaps and better, or getting better by leaps and bounds, I should say. And we saw that. Jandarova couldn't really handle a lot of those things in that fight. She got caught with some shots, ended up losing it. But here's the thing. In that next fight, after the Dern fight, that's the one with Murata. Now, we think about it, the nasty armbar, she got the submission and all that. But prior to that armbar, prior to the grappling exchanges in that fight, I liked her striking. I think she grew in her striking. I think she saw that she couldn't handle the aggression from Dern very well, and she turned around and incorporated that aggression into her own game. She was coming forward and being a lot more aggressive, being on the front foot a lot more against Murata when it came to the striking. It was like she realized that she couldn't handle it. She realized that was a good tool to have in your toolbox, and she immediately incorporated that into her game. Immediately started using that against her opponents. I really like that. I really like the way that it looked. Now, standing across from her is going to be Amanda Ribas. Now, I like Amanda Ribas. I feel like her coming out party was against Mackenzie Dern. Speaking of her again, that's an opponent that both these women have in common. But I feel like her coming out party was against Mackenzie Dern. Mackenzie Dern came into the UFC. She had a lot of hype. She was a big name. People knew about her. So going into the Ribas fight, I think it was Dern's third fight in the UFC. That's who everybody was talking about. Ribas was the big underdog in that fight. And she came out there and just absolutely shined. Now, Mackenzie Dern was coming down a weight class. She looked a little bit slow for the weight. So I think Ribas is fast, but she had an even more pronounced speed advantage in that fight because Dern was coming down in weight. But Ribas looked so sharp in that fight. Her striking was so on point. And again, she's similar to Jandarova in the sense that she comes from a grappling background. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo, right? Both of those were her foundation before she came over into MMA. So she comes over, again, striking's a work in progress, but her striking looked good that night. It was sharp, it was clean, she saw everything coming, she was able to get out of the way. She was just able to land both the leads and the counters. Everything looked good. Then we see her a couple more fights. We see the big win against Paige Van Zandt. She gets her out of there. Essentially, that was it. Paige Van Zandt's last fight in the UFC. Just things couldn't be better for Amanda Ribas. She's continuing to progress and evolve her game. She's got this great energy about her. People love her. Then she goes into the fight with Marina Rodriguez. And I'm going to use a word here that gets overused a lot in my opinion, but she got exposed. And now, hear me out. I don't mean exposed in the sense that she's untalented. Exposed in the sense that she's a bum. Exposed in the sense that that's it, it's over with, we've seen the best of her. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But I used exposed in the sense that I think her hype got in front of her. I think, and that's not her fault, that's the media. The media is the hype. The media is who blows you up. It's the fans who may have expectations or assumptions that you're better than you are. And I think things just got a little bit in front of her. I think people assumed that she was a little better than she was. Her striking's still a work in progress. I think she's only 28 years old at this time, so she's probably not even in her physical prime yet. Definitely not at her highest fight IQ that she'll be, so her best is in front of her. But she did get exposed in the sense that there's work that needs to be done there. Her striking still isn't at the championship level by any stretch of the imagination. She went out there, got some big shots landed on her, and eventually just got caught in a beautiful exchange right in the middle of one of her punches. Marina Rodriguez was able to put her down, get her out of there. Now, you watch that fight, you see that, you're like, okay, great. But Marina Rodriguez is super talented, super skilled. We've seen it since that fight. Like, getting caught by her, getting outstruck by her doesn't necessarily mean anything. A lot of people will. But then I go back, we watch that fight with Randa Marcos. Watch the second round in that Randa Marcos fight. Marcos was able to catch Ribas with a lot of shots too. She wasn't able to get it out of there. Wasn't able to evade as many of Ribas' shots as Marina Rodriguez was. But she caught her with a lot of shots of her own. Marcos was able to catch Ribas, right? So now we're seeing a pattern. It's not just a super talented striker like Rodriguez that is able to get those shots off. Now we see Randa Marcos was able to get those shots off too. So maybe this is more of a pattern. Maybe there's flaws in her game. We can see Amanda Ribas doesn't know how to cut the octagon off, right? Rodriguez was able to lead her around all day, get her into some traps. She comes in, she uses side-to-side movement a little bit on the outside, but she can still become a little bit predictable in her entries. She can be timed. She keeps her chin up a little bit. She doesn't have the variety in her combinations, right? Those are all the types of things that she's going to need to work on to get to that championship level. Okay, but the question is, what's it going to look like when these two step aside the octagon against each other on Saturday night? Because even though Marina Rodriguez was able to get Ribas out of there, that doesn't necessarily mean Jandarova was, right? So when I think about these two fighting each other, first of all, let me say this is a really good fight that I'm looking forward to because I think their skill sets are going to match up really well. And this was a really tough one to pick. Because when I think about the striking, Amanda Ribas is faster. I feel like Amanda Ribas has more room for improvement when it comes to her striking. But I don't think either one of these women are going to be able to fight going backwards. I think this is going to come down in the striking department. It's going to come down to who is able to come forward, who's able to apply effective aggression better. And I think that that's actually going to come down to Jandarova. I think she's a little less versatile. I think she's a little more raw sometimes in her technique. But with what she showed in that Murata fight, if she's able to come forward, if she's able to land that right hand, if she's able to work behind that jab, if she's able to press Ribas backwards, just enforce her will, be strong, be physical, I think she'll win the striking exchanges. I think they'll be a little bit sloppy. I think the distance is going to be a little bit tough to gauge for both women because neither one is such a polished striker. I think the striking is going to lead into the clinch a lot of times because of an inability to gauge the distance. They'll back up into the cage and stuff. And once they're in the clinch, it's a different story. I think Ribas will have the advantage because of that judo background. She's able to get good body locks and get takedowns from there. Both women are efficient at landing elbows. Both women are efficient at landing knees in the clinch. So I expect both of them to do good work there. But I think Ribas could probably transition from that clinch to a body lock to a takedown, score points that way. Once she gets in top position, we know that Jandarova's got this really slick game on the ground. We know that she's always looking for submissions and everything. But that doesn't necessarily mean she's going to be able to get one. Amanda Ribas is no joke. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Very good in top position, understands position and weight and things very well. She can stay chest to chest, knows how to keep her hips heavy. I don't think she's going to get set up for in a bad position and get submitted from top position. She may not be able to do a bunch of damage. I think she'll do a little. She'll be able to get some strikes off and things. Maybe Jandarova is able to get back up. But ultimately, when you see these takedowns and these points in the fight when they're on the ground, I think that's where Ribas is going to be in top position. I think she's going to be able to score there. And ultimately, I think that's why she's going to win the fight. I think that Jandarova will see some success on the feet, but I didn't like how in the past we've seen her be willing to pull guard, be willing to get to the ground because she's so confident in her ground game. And when it's good, it's good. When it works, I don't think it'll work against Ribas. I think Amanda Ribas is going to be able to come out with the victory in this one on points in a pretty close fight that should have some pretty interesting moments and be exciting. So let me know what you guys think. Is Ribas able to pull the victory out in this one, or is Jandarova going to pull the upset? And what's next for both women, depending on how it turns out? Let me know what you guys think.